Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on Granby. Today's date is August 15th, 2011. Our guest tonight is Thelma Shenkman, an 83-year-old resident of Granby, born on 12/16/1927. She's a resident of Fern Hollow Drive in Granby, and she moved here in 1959. Thank you for joining us tonight, Thelma.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I've enjoyed watching you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we generally start with your birth, which is a good place to start in any life, I suppose. But where were you born and where are you from?
I'm a Maniac from Portland, Maine.
You're from Maine, okay,
From
great.
Portland, Maine.
And you have, you were born there in 1927, so that's a few years ago. How long did you live there?
Until I graduated college in Maine.
So you spent your upbringing, basically?
I came to Hartford to teach because it was halfway between Boston and New York.
Okay. What were your parents' names?
Philip Resnick, Diana Resnick.
Okay. And you were, what are you, thinking back, what were your earliest memories of childhood? Do you have,
We lived right near the ocean, a couple of blocks from the ocean.
Okay.
So that's, I'm an ocean person, a sand dollar, shell collector.
Yeah. It never leaves your blood once you...
No. And going down to the beach and having our mother yell at us on Sunday because we were supposed to be home cleaning house or getting dinner ready or something.
Okay.
But we would run off to the beach.
Yeah.
Being in Maine was a good experience. I'm glad I grew up there. It was not a place I wanted to stay after I graduated college.
Okay.
I didn't want to teach in Maine.
Okay. So your early years going to school there were just normal public schools?
Wonderful public schools, yeah.
Right.
And then I went to Gorham State Teachers College, which is a part of the University of Southern Maine.
Okay.
In fact, I was part of the first class that graduated as a four-year student. It had been a, I don't remember what they call the schools in them, but it wasn't a regular college.
Okay.
It was a three-year institution, and I was in first-year class of the four-yearers.
So you grew up during the Depression. What was it like in the community where you lived during that era? I mean, was there much memory related to the
No, I know that my father worked very hard, and I knew that with very little money for extra things. But when you're in a happy life and a happy household, you don't think about those things too much. I started babysitting at a very early age, so that I could buy the extra books and things that I wanted.
Okay. What did your parents do? I mean, was your mom a housewife?
My mother was a complete housewife. She would volunteer. Volunteered for the synagogue and for the schools and so forth. Okay. My father too. My father was very active in the American Legion.
Okay.
And for a Jewish gentleman in Maine, that was unusual.
Yeah.
But he was a commander of the post there. He had his own business. He was a trucker at one time. He ended up with a oil business.
Was he American? He was a veteran of World War I?
Yes, he was.
Oh, okay.
He was World War I. My brother was Korea.
Wow, that's quite a stretch of time.
My sister went. My sister was in the service too.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
One of each.
One brother and one sister. What were their names?
Anne and Bernard.
Okay.
In fact, they both died within the last 2 years. Both of them.
Now you had you're growing up in the Maine neighborhood where you grew up. You mentioned your Jewish community. Was there much of a ability to pursue your Jewish heritage there?
Yes, it was a very large community. It was each community was within itself.
Really?
You didn't date anybody who was not your religion, or you didn't party with people who weren't your religion at that time.
It's a different era.
My parents changed their mind as the years went by.
Right.
But it was. And in fact, I was one of the few Jewish girls at the college, all 4 years of the college when I was there.
Okay. I think World War II seems to have broken down a lot of those barriers for people. It kind of forced everyone into the same pot for a few years.
Absolutely.
So, any school day memories you wanted to share? What was it like going to school then?
Different than the schools that I taught.
Okay.
Basically.
What would the biggest difference be? Since you were a teacher, that's kind of an interesting question.
Well, I think the teachers today are much more liberal and much more knowledgeable also.
Okay.
Much more interested in the entire individual than they were in my day.
So they bring more to the table in terms of the training.
A great deal more. I think that's probably why I decided to become a teacher. I wanted to do it better.
Yeah. Well, that's the inspiration for any, hopefully,
Yeah.
for most people. You went to college and...
I commuted to college
okay.
in order to be able to continue to work because for financial reasons.
Okay.
It was a hard time for my parents, and I didn't want them to have to worry about that type of thing.
Now, this is, what years was it, or what year did you graduate
I graduated
college?
high school, Portland High School in 1945,
Okay.
and Gorham State Teachers College in 1949. And you could go down the college, off the college campus, and put your thumb up and get back into the city of Portland in those days.
Back when it was fully
Yeah.
safe to do that sort of
Fully
thing.
safe.
Yeah.
It was a college town, and everybody was well aware of the commuters having to get back into the city.
Well, there was a real issue with this was during, well, it's just after World War II, right? That you graduated in 45, so
I graduated in 49.
graduated high school in 45.
High school, yes.
So you went to college after.
A good number of my classmates left school before graduation.
Okay.
Half of our crowd did because they went into the service, or they didn't have a choice next. Some of them were drafted in, and some of them enlisted.
In college.
In high school, in 45.
So they were drafting high school?
I might be wrong, but they
Wow.
were after high school graduates.
Right.
A lot of them did not show up for our high school graduation at that time.
Oh, they grabbed them right away.
Yeah.
Right, right. That's
In fact, a few years later, then we had, the college was almost an all-girls college for a while.
Really?
And then we had all the veterans coming back.
interesting times. It was different, I
Very,
should say.
very different times. Yeah.
Now, you went to school to become a teacher.
Torn between teaching and librarying. How's that for a word?
Okay. So you went with the idea you were going to be a librarian or a teacher.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I ended up being the teacher because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to have enough influence on the children by having to do all the other things that librarians have to do, as I have since discovered.
So you enjoyed the interaction with the kids enough to
I
want to
wanted
pursue that.
Yes, I did.
That's
I
fascinating.
was going to go on and get a degree, and I ended up in
Okay.
library science, but I decided not to. I got my missus instead.
Oh, you got married. Okay.
But I've spent a lot of library time there. In fact, I just before my 83rd birthday retired from a library in the West Hartford in the Jewish Community Center there. I was an
Okay.
assistant librarian, so I've been working right up till recently.
Well, it certainly kept your intellectual capacity going. You're
Hopefully.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully.
So you have you graduated high school with a degree, college with a degree in
Bachelor of Science.
Bachelor of Science. Okay. So you in the teaching field, that was your discipline?
Yes, I could go from preschool up until 8th grade. I was licensed for.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so you graduate college. You're still in Maine. What happens then? Where do you go?
I had all kinds of choices in terms of where to teach. At that time, it was marvelous. I went to an agency, and they gave me jobs all over the country.
Really? So there's a lot of demand for teachers at that
but
point.
because of the times with my brother being in the service and then my sister also for a while at that time, I wanted to be close to home, and that's why I chose the Hartford area. I
Okay.
chose Bloomfield, actually,
Okay.
because of the nearness to Maine and Boston, where my family lived, and the excitement that a single lady thought was going to happen in New York City.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you mentioned you became a missus at some point. When did that happen?
In 1952.
Okay, so you graduated, and within a few years, you
But
were working at that point.
Yes,
right?
I continued to work until my son was born in 61.
Okay.
I continued to teach until 61.
What was your first teaching position like? I mean, where was that, and what you mentioned?
It was interesting. It was in Bloomfield, and
Okay.
I had just spent a good amount of time in Europe. My in-laws were there, and my husband
Oh.
and I were considering moving there for a while. And we were going to live in the Strasbourg area in France.
Okay.
And it was kind of exciting, and we went there for a while and came back, and the job that I expected to have it had been taken by somebody else. So I got, by default, we used that word before.
Yeah.
Lots of things by default in my life.
A lot of things in life are rated for.
But I had to wait around for a job for a little bit.
Okay.
They had hired me, but the person that they hired me to replace came back.
Okay.
So I worked in the superintendent's office
Okay.
at
In
one
Bloomfield?
point in Bloomfield. It was kind of, no, that was in Windsor.
In
I'm
Windsor,
sorry.
okay, yep.
In Windsor. In Bloomfield, I taught the first grade.
Okay.
Windsor, I ended up, I believe, in the 3rd grade.
Right.
But I wasn't ready to go back to public school until my son was fully in school himself.
Okay.
And the congregation began in Simsbury, this Farmington Valley Jewish congregation.
Right. Okay.
We were part of this beginning members. And we're doing lots of things, social things and educational things. And I was concerned that nothing was being done for the children. So before I turned around, we had 12 children, and I was a principal, and we had a school.
Oh, wow. So you put something together.
I put 40 years worth of schooling in there.
Wow.
So I never went back to public school, and then I never went back to library science.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier your husband's family was from Europe.
He was from Europe.
And how did you meet him?
At the Jewish Community Center in West Hartford.
Okay.
He was a Holocaust victim.
Oh, really?
He had
survived?
Yes, he was a survivor.
Obviously. Wow.
He's back there. He went back to Europe. He went back. His mother was alive, and he went back. We were there a number of times, and the question was to live or not to live in Europe.
Right.
And my decision was not to live in Europe.
Okay, so that was a big decision. That was a turning point, a crossroads in your life. Right?
Yeah.
So you guys came back here and you started your family, and you were working. So I guess from there, why don't you just quickly run through your early career, because I got a little confused. You started in Windsor?
No, I started in Bloomfield.
So you started
I
in
think
Bloomfield,
I said the right, yes.
went to Europe.
I started in Bloomfield, went to Europe, and came back and worked in Windsor.
In the superintendent's office?
Yes, and then replaced another teacher and started teaching again.
In Windsor?
In Windsor.
Okay.
So all of my public teaching was in Bloomfield and Windsor.
Okay.
And then got into the non-paying world for a while.
Started the...
Started the congregation, and then 10 years later I started the nursery school there.
What was the inspiration for starting the school? I mean, you said it's to do stuff for younger children, but
well, it was interesting that we went in for recreation into the Jewish Community Center, and my son was like the outsider type of thing. We did things, and he went to many programs there, but when it was time to go home, he didn't see these kids. We
Okay.
came out to Granby, and they went to West Hartford or wherever they lived.
Right.
So therefore, I didn't want him to go to a Sunday school that would be that same situation where he would be an outsider.
Right.
And I discovered that there were other people who felt the same, who had moved into the valley.
Okay.
And we rounded up 12 children and started.
So it was an attempt to kind of establish some sort of cohesive community for your kids. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
More for the children, yes.
Interesting.
We'd already started something socially for the adults, but I felt the children needed this more important for their own identity.
Yeah. Now, your son's name is?
Len Shenkman.
Len. Okay. And he has 2 children now, you said? What are their names?
Philip and Rachel.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you have you have started this school, and what were the challenges initially? I mean, you said it grew to 12 kids, but that's...
Oh, the challenges were people came from different walks of life, Reform Judaism, Orthodox Judaism,
Right.
conservative.
Trying to pull them into one tent. Yeah.
Orthodox wasn't a problem, but conservative and Reform, trying to pull them together and getting proper material.
Okay.
But I was very fortunate that my sister and brother-in-law belonged to a synagogue in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Oh, beautiful.
So they fed me all kinds of material, and the rabbis in the Jewish community in Greater Hartford were very, very helpful.
Okay.
And I could get whatever I needed in terms of material. And when it came to deciding what type of a congregation we were going to be, I already had the proper books to start with.
Right.
Because the Reform, we were a conservative synagogue and later became Reform.
Okay.
And when we did, I had I had been using all of the Reform material in the religious school because it was much more up to date.
Okay. So it was really just an attempt to really kind of make a cohesive culture for your children in some ways.
And also to make the Farmington Valley community who turned us down for a house when we first moved out here because they said that if you're Jewish, you're not going to be interested in being in this community or that community, without putting my finger on Farmington within the valley. And we decided that it would be a good idea to educate everyone, not in our religion, but in the fact that there were many other religions and they should all be treated equally.
Now, you just made a comment there. You were turned down on a house. What?
We wouldn't be interested. You could do that. And we bought our house here in '59.
Okay.
And along those lines, you could easily be turned down for any number of reasons,
So this is
which you cannot do any longer.
No, of course not. But it's an interesting little historical snippet here because I think most people have lost track of that. That there was such, institutional, use the word prejudice, basically, in within the system that was challenged in the 60s, and many of those walls were torn down in the 50s and 60s. But I think that's fairly recent history, and I think people have lost touch with how strong those sentiments really were. So you asked to see a house. You go to a
We had an agent, and there were houses in several areas in the valley.
Right.
That they thought we would not be happy because the community might not accept us. And that seemed so ridiculous. We had never lived under such. My husband wasn't surprised, but it was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Very surprising to me.
Yeah.
Although I had, you forget, I did grow up with a great deal of prejudice, and in terms of jobs and so forth.
In Maine, yeah.
Yeah, or in Maine.
Yeah.
My husband went to school in New York for 1 year, and I had trouble getting a job in New York also.
Really? Wow.
One of the utility companies wouldn't hire me the minute they heard my name. So that seems like
I'm laughing, and I'm not laughing.
No,
right.
it is funny. And thinking
It's
back,
absurd.
I don't. My son doesn't know this type of thing. I mean, he didn't have to put up with this type of thing.
Right.
And my grandchildren probably won't either.
Generational shift.
Yeah.
I love to focus on issues like that because it's so easy for people to forget why there is such an inspiration for people to change any sort of prejudice, and why there were extremely powerful emotions at play that have been lost to the younger generation because it doesn't exist, and it's because your generation fought the fight, really. So you ended up buying a house. Where was the first house that you bought?
It's the same house I'm in now.
Oh, you moved right here. Okay, so you ended up in Granby because you couldn't look at a house in another town, which is...
No, we ended up in Granby because we wanted a starter house, and there was
so it was
a small
good
house
fit.
there, and my husband used to go into Massachusetts on business, and it turned out that he did go on 10202.
Right.
And when the gentleman wanted to show us the house, we said, why not?
Right.
After we eventually decided on this house, we're absolutely amazed to find that we could walk up to Massachusetts from our house.
Oh, yeah, that close.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty part of town up there. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we jump into your experiences in Granby, why don't we just touch on your career? Because it seems like that was a very big part of your life. You started the school, you built it. What happened from the initial inception to the 12 to what was your history there? What was it?
It grew.
Yeah, yeah. It's a success, right?
It was a definite success.
Right.
I mean, when I left there, we had as many as 300 students, and had the faculty. Sometimes I had as many as 25, 30 on the faculty.
And you were the principal?
I was a principal for over 30 years, yes.
Okay. Now, what was the biggest change in that school? I mean, obviously the number of students creates completely different...
The types of people that came came from many different areas. Initially, we had a lot of people coming out of New York, coming into Connecticut.
Okay.
Different people, different attitudes about going over the mountain into West Hartford. That was always a big joke. We're on the other side of the mountain.
Okay. So...
It grew rather quickly. People were looking for a Judaic education for their children. Some of them left after their children were bar mitzvahed. Some stayed on.
Okay.
There are many people who've been there all along. And we just celebrated 50 years, so we've done something right.
Yeah, right. Very successful. So you built it from... Just describe the program real quickly, because you kind of touched on it before we started the show. What is it? What if you become part of that program? What do you do?
You mean in terms of it's
if you sign your child up, what is it?
Well, you're learning a language,
Okay.
you're learning a history, and you're learning a culture.
So you teach Hebrew?
And ethics. Oh, yes, there was Hebrew there also. Mm-hmm. Children prepare for their bar mitzvahs at 13. Children in the 10th grade are confirmed. But it's not just Judaic, it's a cultural thing, I'd say.
Okay.
Judaic as well as a cultural thing.
Okay. So you're educating the children in the ways that of the religion in many ways, or the culture.
Yes, but, and with ethical values are as important.
Now you mentioned briefly before that part of the inspiration was to educate others on what the Jewish community was like.
So that nobody would say you can't buy a house here.
Exactly, right. Just to spread the kind of
Yes.
enlighten people to.
Yes, and for a long time I was the token who was called up to say, what do I bring for a bar mitzvah gift, or what do I wear, or how do I
Okay.
act, or what do you do when
like
somebody...
the Miss Manners of the Farmington Valley.
Yeah, well, no, of Granby. I didn't necessarily of Simsbury. There were
Okay.
more people living in Simsbury.
Right.
Yes, what do I wear for a wedding? What do I do when somebody's died? All of those
Right.
effects of life, important things.
Before the age of Google, they called
Right,
They called
absolutely.
you up and-
They Googled Thelma.
what color. Okay, so you had a very successful career there. Any particular stories that you want to share from there? I mean, there's always. I'm sure that you have thousands of them.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Is there anything that you find yourself repeating occasionally?
Not in terms of it was important, as a group, we had to decide whether we wanted a building or to be able to hire a rabbi.
Okay.
And we ended up doing the building so there would be a place for the rabbi to come.
Build it and they will come philosophy.
Yeah, and people came quicker than we met in, I don't know if you were here long enough to know Dorset's in Simsbury, but there was a clothing store in the area across from the skating rink in that little mall there.
Okay.
And Dorset's and Art Phillips had a store there. Art Phillips from Granby had a store there, and an empty store was there, and we used to meet in that store. We met in the toy building. Ensign Bickford really gave us the land so that we could eventually build our building.
Beautiful.
So that with lots of people interested and concerned, that was an important thing, that decision, the building of the rabbi. And in terms of the nursery school, one of the nursery schools closed in one of the churches, or they were closing because the church was having some type of a problem.
Okay.
So, having loved the children and wanting to do something about this, I opened a nursery school and ended up being the director and teacher there. And we did not confine it to just Jewish children. And we had a lot of non-Jewish children coming for the loving and the concern that were given to the younger children too.
Right.
So that we can't come very involved in the community.
Well, that's a huge cultural bridge. If you can provide a service to the community, that really opens up a lot of goodwill.
It certainly did. Well, there were problems with everything. There always are. But yes, I think we've had a 50-year adventure that's been very valuable.
Sounds like you followed a very good path. You take it there.
Yeah, thinking back, I'm glad I didn't go back to public school.
Right.
Even though that was my love, I enjoyed teaching and I did want to go on. Spent a lot of time setting up a library. The children didn't have a library. We set up a music program. There were things that were important, but also it was a chance to learn more. We had many comparative religion classes for the older kids and even for the younger ones, just so that they would also know what was happening. People who moved out into the valley were educated people who didn't lack knowledge of other religions, but we wanted the children to get help from us before they went into the public school and were perhaps faced with things that they didn't know about.
Yeah, anything you can add to diversity usually is good at a young age. So you had a very successful career there. Now, when you first moved to Granby, I'm going to kind of segue here into your experience here in town. You first moved to Granby. What were your first impressions when you came to look at your house? Do you remember what struck you?
Well, I remember my father saying, "What did you come out in the country for?"
Oh, yeah.
We had the people we bought. We were just the second people in this house. We had fleas, and my father thought, all right, so you're out here, so you're going to have fleas and all of this type of thing.
Right. You wanted it, you got it, right?
Yes. No, it was a nice community. I know that I got involved with the Cosset Library.
Okay.
Because they were, for me, it was walking distance at that time. I couldn't do it today.
Right.
But I went up there and started story hour. There was a story up there with.
They must have loved when you walked through the door as a librarian.
Well, I started out.
Yeah.
They didn't. I certainly didn't tell them, and I didn't in terms of that. But I
Right.
went there with wanting a story hour for my
Okay,
son, and there was another gal, and Lila Innes was there, and this Bobby Sullivan were doing it and doing an excellent job, but trying too hard. You know, Bobby knows books very well,
Right.
and had wonderful books, but she was reading as many as she could possibly read to them
Okay.
before their mothers picked them up. So I took her by the hand and said, "This isn't the way to do it. Can I help you?"
Right.
And that was the beginning of the rest of my life,
Oh, beautiful.
because I did story hours with her probably 12 years or so, and I had to leave because it was conflicting with my other career at the
Right.
religious school. But I was appointed to the library board, and I believe I was on the town library board for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was representing, Cosset.
Okay.
And in fact, for a few years, my particular job was to be in charge of Cosset, which was fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was very involved there. And during that same time, I think they were looking for somebody in public schools to do eye testing for the children. I've forgotten what you call it, but it was for preschool children. They're checking their
Early
vision.
childhood vision. Yeah.
I've forgotten at the moment. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
But I ended up getting involved with the public health. So I was on those two town boards for 20 years.
Wow.
And everybody asked me why I didn't move to Simsbury. I didn't, because of the wonderful things that happened here in Granby.
Wow.
So I don't know now how I did it, being on those two boards, plus the jobs I had and
Amazing.
being a mom too.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But he learned how to cook.
It's amazing. People who take on a lot tend to accomplish a lot.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Yeah,
interesting dynamic. So your son went to school here in town?
yeah. He
What
went
was
to
your
Granby High.
experience with that? I mean, that was the early days of. Did they have kindergarten then, or was that?
No,
Yeah.
that's what. Oh no, they didn't.
Right.
Not in Granby.
Right.
They
A lot of
did.
towns didn't.
They didn't. No, many of the towns in the state had it.
Oh, had
we
they?
Were, we
Okay.
were one of the last ones.
Okay.
In fact, we paid for 2 years of kindergarten for my son before
Really?
the first year of public. In fact,
When you say you paid, where would you send the child?
Valley Preschool. He went to 1 year, and we started another year. We started a school down at there's a daycare center down here in the center of town.
Okay.
And the women from the Y started a school we did it for a couple of years. I was very involved with the young women's group, the Y group.
Okay.
And there were people in town
The
who couldn't afford.
YWCA or the Y?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there?
It's not the same kind. It's called Young Women's. It's called a different thing now. I don't know
Okay,
just what it
all right.
was. But I bowled with them, and we did lots of things. And
Okay.
we had children in town who couldn't afford to pay for kindergarten, so we started a kindergarten down there. We had it, I don't know, for a couple of years, a group of us from town did this.
Wow.
I don't know what group we were from necessarily. Don't remember. Well, we got together and started a preschool and hired teachers
Interesting.
a couple of years, and then
So what year would this have been, approximately?
I don't know. If my son was born in '61.
So the late 60s?
We had a 3-year-old group and a library, 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds.
Mid-60s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
early '60s.
Okay. So,
You had to stand in line if you wanted to, when it was time to become a part of the kindergarten. You had to stand in line at 4 in the morning or something in order to get a place in the schools. They were so popular, and there were several schools in town. I think
Okay.
there were just 2,
okay.
one down in the center and one up at the,
So if you
it was
wanted...
the South Church and the North Church.
Okay. So if you wanted to get your child into early schooling, you had to really
Yeah.
fight to get in.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then the year that my son finished 2 years, his birthday was in November, and I really never believed in September being a date cutoff date for kindergarten or for first grade dates. I really believe it should be in December.
Okay.
I feel very strongly about that, and I wasn't going to send him to school
You think
as
it's a
a
little too
November
early
child.
for
So
it, yeah.
I spend 2 years in kindergarten, and then the next year it was public.
It's interesting you say that, because I've read some studies that they've looked at sports and to see which children tend to excel, and it's always the ones that were a little older when they started. So you were certainly onto
in all
something.
aspects of it, yeah.
So any education, I think,
Yeah.
would apply. Yeah. So that's it's an interesting observation. So you're living in Granby. Anything else? I mean, other than the fact that you were in the country, obviously. Anything else that you remember your early days that was maybe surprising or different or?
Well, there were so many good volunteers. I was too busy
Yeah.
to have time to be surprised.
You were very involved. So,
I was
yeah.
very involved and wanted my son to be involved or have enough things. He ended up being an only child, and I
Okay.
wanted to give him all of these other experiences
So
that
these
I
were-
possibly could.
This was it's still almost part of the baby boom. I guess it would still be in some ways. So there was lots of kids, lots of school changes, lots of educational changes going on during that era. So you were part of that whole kind of
Right.
coming out of. There was a lot more children. You had they were building schools everywhere at that point, weren't they? Pretty much.
Yeah, Wells, all of our schools in town. In fact, Kelly Lane was built during the time that Wells Road. Well, he went to Wells Road. I'm not sure the dates. Either one of them were built, but the mothers that I was involved with all had gone to different schools in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a new generation,
Yeah.
really. Your early years here, you were living, you were working, you were raising your child. Anything about that time that's, I guess I probably should ask this question. What's the biggest change from that time that you remember? That you can kind of quantify? Something that's, if you look back to that era, the late...
The shopping.
Okay.
And, because we lived in Hartford first, I would go back to Hartford to shop at West Hartford. People who lived out in this area went off towards Springfield or towards Southwick. I thought that the volunteerism was just wonderful.
That was most
Between
striking.
the Y and all of this. Yes, and there were, of course, there were few houses. There was less traffic, and there were not that many businesses. We did all our shopping on the one little store down in the center of Granby,
Right.
and I've forgotten the name of it. When you reach 33, you do forget something.
That's right. 34 is even worse, I've
No,
heard.
2 o'clock in the morning, I will call you back and tell you the name of
No,
the store.
that's quite... Yeah.
No,
I'm sure
everybody was very friendly, and we had a nice community, and we always had things going on that I don't see in my particular neighborhood. Well, I'm the senior in the neighborhood practically, but at the time there were always cookouts in the neighborhood, and a very, very friendly area.
But it's interesting because I've had this discussion many times now. And do you think that at that point there were still a lot of moms home? I mean, you were a working,
Yes.
you were an active.
But I was home enough to be involved in all the things that my son was involved in.
Right.
And there were a lot of other mothers who were, and yes, you're right, most of them were. Many of them were home, not most of them, many of them were home.
I just remember my own experience. I grew up mostly in the 70s, having been, clearly remembering all the moms being home when I was in kindergarten. And by the time I was in middle school, they were all working. So there was a real shift there. Do you think that it has to have had a dramatic effect on the ability of people to volunteer, to form civic
Absolutely.
groups?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really, it almost comes down to an economic kind of.
I believe so.
Yeah. Anyway, so you I digress.
That's all right.
It's all
I'll
about
stay.
you.
I'll stay.
You during that era. Now the changes that you've seen in town. What I guess would you point at as the most beneficial? What is it that you like the most about the evolution of Granby?
I like the fact that I knew everybody in town.
Okay.
Maybe I was very, very involved. I did the UNICEF program. I did a mental health program. So I was always calling people to volunteer for something, and everybody was always so friendly and so helpful
Right.
and willing to do something. I do believe they are now also, but not as many.
Right.
And it's not their choice necessarily.
It's much tougher.
But it was a very, very friendly community.
It was more of a farming community, not farming it per se, but there was more open space.
I had never been to a farm until I moved to Granby.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, for you, it was definitely more.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just beyond what I would call it at the time.
Yeah.
I think I miss some of that.
Yeah, that's true. You're into the building of the 50s and 60s, so a lot of that has already happened. So you're
But the cider mill was there.
oh, okay. All right. Now, if you were, this is sometimes a loaded question because why don't we? What are some of the characters? You remember any of the folks that you interacted with when you first came to town? Is there anybody that stands out, or any individuals that strike you as being particularly
Well,
memorable?
because I got involved with the library or the people at the town hall, you get involved, or at the school. I learned from preschool that I was not going to get too involved in public school. I was going to do what I could.
Right.
But I think my son might have become tired of seeing me around all the time.
Right.
I did a little substituting, and I decided that wasn't it either for me. But sure, the library, the Lila Innes and all the people at the library and the
Mrs.
library.
Sullivan,
And that's how and Mrs. Sullivan, and the cider mill with Lois Longley. And that North Granby, a small North Granby community, was very friendly. And then, of course, joining the Y, in fact, I'm part of a Red Hat group. And a good many of them
Why
are
don't you
people I bowled
tell
with.
our viewers what the Red Hat, that always cracks me up. What is the Red Hat Society or group?
It's a group of women who reach you. I think you're a pink hat lady if you're up under 50.
Okay.
A group of women who decide to get together socially with no rules.
Okay.
And go out. I think we do some good things. Not enough for me in terms of this.
Well, you're an
But,
overachiever.
Yeah, but perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. But get together socially and with our red hats and this is one of my purple things.
Okay.
Where you're supposed to have been. There's a poem, and I can't quote it to you now. I should be able to. The other people in my group probably could.
Right.
About wearing red and purple together, and not behaving the way other people behaving any way you wanted to behave.
It's an opportunity to let your hair
freedom
down.
of women,
Okay.
for women.
Interesting.
Yeah. There are several groups here in town.
And what do you do when you get together?
Depends.
It's a social.
It's mostly
Yeah.
social. Yeah, a few times when Art Phillips and Sheila Phillips, their son, was in Iraq. We got together and sent things for him and for his buddies, that type of thing.
Okay.
But we aren't doing that much in terms of, we get together. It's a chance. Some of the people who have spent a lot of time at home
Okay.
are happy to get out and
Sure.
run off with ladies, go to the theater, go to the movies, go out to eat.
think
This
it's
past
great.
week they went swimming together
Okay.
and had a picnic. I didn't join them, but they do a lot. They were doing things I couldn't always join them with because sometimes they were doing it in the daytime and I was too busy.
Okay.
But
It's a women's group.
it's a women's
yeah.
group, and there are several of them here in Granby and Simsbury.
But they
And it's a
actually have
fun
red
thing.
hats.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think there are a couple in my car right now.
That's funny, yeah.
Yes, it's a national organization. There's
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of women who belong, and they have conferences and conventions, and
I think I saw them in a parade once somewhere.
probably,
Yeah. yeah.
probably not me,
No. no.
not me.
Okay, so if you were to, in your years in town, if there was one thing you could change, if there's anything that I kind of use the magic wand analogy. If you had a magic wand, is there anything about Granby that you would change? If you had the ability to grant a wish to the town.
So many of the things have changed for the better
Okay.
since I've been here.
Right.
Anything I would change? No, in fact, I don't take advantage of some of the wonderful things they have. I have not been too involved with the senior center, and I have friends who I think it's absolutely amazing what this town has compared to what other towns have.
I've heard their senior center is very vibrant.
Absolutely
yeah,
amazing. I see what they're doing, and I hear what they're doing.
Right.
And I've gone in a few times, but as I say, I'm so used to going to work in Simsbury or in West Hartford that I don't spend that much time here. But absolutely amazing what they're accomplishing there
Right.
for senior citizens, male and female. I'm really thrilled. That whole complex, I guess that's where I am
Yeah,
now.
we're in the periphery here.
This whole complex is just an amazing thing, I believe, and I think Granby is a very well-run little town.
So you're happy with it?
Very.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
as I say,
Well,
my
happy with
life
the-
had been in Simsbury,
Yep.
and for the past few years I've been working in West Hartford. I could easily have moved, and living alone, you start thinking about this type of thing.
Yeah, less commute.
No, I wouldn't leave. I wish there were a few people my age on my street,
Yeah, yeah.
but that doesn't matter either. Yeah,
Neighborhoods
no.
go through those shifts.
I really can't think of anything with the sidewalks and all of these things. I think they're doing a great deal to modernize our little town
Right.
and keep up with what's important. I think the schools are also doing very well.
They seem to have done a very good job in
Yeah.
Granby of kind of developing their education.
When we chose Granby instead of Simsbury, a good many people were critical because they felt a great deal more was, and things are accomplished, more things can be accomplished in a larger town financially.
Right, right.
And at a different time also. But I do believe that we're doing very well.
If you were, in your experience, in the Jewish school that you developed and the public schools, is there anything that you think would be helpful to integrate between the two, or are they very distinct? And
Oh, I think they do integrate things. I think they do. I have not been involved for a few years, and I'm not sure exactly what, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem there. They acknowledge the holidays as they do other holidays.
right.
That's really putting me on the spot. I can't.
No, that was
There
just
must
occurred to me
be.
that.
Yes.
I mean, diversity can only go so far before you start to lose any focus. You know,
Right,
you're trying
absolutely,
to take
right.
everything in, but acknowledging at least.
And I don't have children or grandchildren in town.
So you're
I mean,
not-
they're in the Simsbury school, so I volunteered, the last few years I volunteered down in the library down there.
Yeah.
And am very pleased with what my grandchildren are getting. And I'm sure the same. I've
Yeah.
only heard good things about Granby.
Good.
I volunteered in the schools when my son was there, also in the library or some such thing.
Right.
But I think it's kind of too bad that I can't be more specific. But
No, that's fine. It was a very, very vague question, so I was just
well, I
fishing.
gave you a vague answer. How's
There
that?
you go. It was a match. In your years of education, I mean, because you spent so many years in them, is there anything that's changed in the educational process that is something you think is lost? Because I think I often hear that, like you said, the discipline in the schools has become different and more liberal in its
Yes,
application.
I'm concerned that parents who are now in the workforce are not able to spend as much time or know as much about what's going on. I know they try, but I was happy when parents were there. I loved having parents there as often as possible,
Right.
so that they were part of the whole picture.
Okay.
A teacher can only do as much as a certain amount, and it's the home cooperation that's so terribly important.
It always I have an 8-year-old. It always amazes me at the responsibility that falls on teachers today, and I think it's a
Too
very
much, I believe.
underrated profession. You know, I mean, I think that they really have. They're many times they're a parent, teacher, nurse. You go down the list. It's quite a.
My 9-year-old, I'm amazed at what he's doing in school as compared to what I would have been teaching a 9-year-old or 8-year-old in my day.
It seems like the educational process is certainly good.
Yes.
My 8-year-old's the same way.
Yeah.
It amazes me with some of the stuff that they're teaching them. If you have advice to teachers today, what would you say? You have to have some opinion. Very bright lady.
But I'm on camera.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, you can word it any way you like.
Is to do their thing and make sure that they're involved as
Okay.
much as they can with the parents,
Okay.
and to try to involve parents with the children. But they have to get to know the individual child, and I hope that their class sizes are such that they can be very aware of the individual child. We have children getting lost out there, and I don't know why.
Right.
And I just hope that these teachers try to find out and have support so that they can do something about it.
Right. So that's a pretty all-encompassing advice. That's important.
Not too specific, as I say. I listen and I watch and try to vote on what should be doing, and I'd like to see more money always going into the educational field because it's necessary.
Right. Well, if you had, this is a question on the other end of the spectrum, if you had advice to children today growing up, what would that be? I mean, if that was...
Mothers and grandmothers don't give children advice.
They don't? No. Well,
They
grandmothers are the... I tend to be the lenient ones with the children. They tend to let them get away with more. That's been my experience, where the parents are always trying to keep them in check.
No, this grandmother isn't that lenient.
No,
I don't think.
No.
Unfortunately, I keep saying, well, what does your mother say, or what does your father say, type of thing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
But
supportive.
no, I do feel that some children are over-programmed today in the outside world, outside of the school world.
Okay.
There are too many competitive things that they have to spend time with. I don't think children have enough time today to get on a bike and ride someplace. In my son's day, he could ride up to Southwick, and I never worried about him driving or being on the bike by himself at a great middle school or high school.
Right.
But it isn't just that. I don't think that the children have enough time by themselves to learn what to do with their own time.
Okay.
Not with their electronic devices.
Right. That's the trap.
And
today,
not
yeah.
with, I don't think they need 10 sports in order to be successful in their adult life.
Okay.
I think a few things are fine. I just see them. My grandson will say, "What's on your agenda today?" He wants to know, and he has a very busy agenda.
Right.
Like, I have Thursday night off free this week, Grandma, kind of thing.
Right.
I think they all are just my children. I think all young children are overly programmed today.
So, in relating that to children, what would you suggest that they pull themselves back from that overexposure?
No, never. No.
No?
Young children can't pull themselves
No,
back.
I don't mean pull themselves back. I guess I'm thinking more like young adults, as they're looking forward in their life. It sounds like in some ways you're suggesting that they take a little time to themselves and have time to explore their own whimsy, for lack of a better word.
I hope that would continue right on through.
Yeah.
As they get closer in high school and to college, they have to know what to do with themselves, and they have to learn how to take care of themselves also.
Right.
And be a little unprogrammed. No, they have to be programmed when they're getting off and going on their own. They have to learn how to manage their time.
Right.
But I believe the young children today have their time managed for them too much.
Right. I think as a parent of a young child, that's definitely something people are cognizant of, and you're always like, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? Am I doing, are you involving them? But it's funny because I find my son oftentimes says he just wants to go home. When you're running around doing 47 things, he wants a couple hours just to play with his toys and relax. So I think you're probably onto something. I think kids need that time to...
Because when they go home, they end up doing their homework or doing something else. They really need some time to think for themselves and do for themselves.
Yeah.
Or read what they want.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's real easy to get sucked into that manic kind of activity that's out there. So, is there is anything else about the town of Granby? Any stories that you want to share that I did mention to you a little bit before the show when I talked to you a few days ago? If there was anything you wanted to elaborate on or share with our viewers, or
I know how it's changed, and the changes I see are for the good. I can't think of any little stories now.
No, that's okay.
In terms of. I remember when the house burned down and everybody ran to help, and I remembered things that other people are doing in terms of community efforts. Sick child, neighbors all come along and help. This is I feel an excellent community. I think East Granby is too.
Yep.
I'm learning more about East Granby through your program.
Oh, good. That's our goal.
I really... I'm really happy with Granby. I like the schools. The shopping has improved. For seniors who need transportation, they have this. Mm-hmm. For seniors being in that field today without children or grandchildren in this community,
right.
I see that if there's anything needed, it's there. Right. It's there. The public health is there, and the senior center is there.
You feel they've structured it pretty well for a small town.
Yeah, can you believe it? I can't find anything that I need.
No.
A bookstore.
Well, you're the type of person, if you need something, you tend to go out and find it, it seems.
Right.
So,
But
or make
yes,
it.
right.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I really have not thought in terms of. I know that when I had challenges, physical challenges, there was always somebody right there to help or give suggestions or do what they needed to help me. No, I think I'll stay here for a while.
So
Not another 59 years necessarily.
Yeah, at 83 years old, you certainly have laid some roots down, it sounds like.
Yes, I have, and I'm glad they were in Granby. I was tempted several times to leave the area or perhaps move back further, up further into New England. Although, if you're from Maine, you say down to Maine.
Do you still get up to Maine often? Or
I haven't been able to. I am going to in a few weeks. I
You mentioned
lived there
that.
in the summertime. We had a summer home in Old Orchard Beach for
Oh,
years.
wow.
And I went out and collected sand dollars and used these shells and decorated them for Christmas trees and for need tags. And at the time, I wasn't alert enough to realize that I was taking a living animal up from the ocean. And when I realized that, how upset I was.
Oh, yeah.
I used to take
For decoration,
Well, I
right?
used to take the neighborhood kids, and
Yeah.
we would go walking on the beach and dig up the sand. I knew just how to find them.
Yeah.
Until I realized that was the wrong thing to do, and you walk on the beach at a different time of the year and find the ones that have been stranded, and you can have them.
Right,
But
right.
we made pins for them at Cosset
Okay.
to make money to refurnish the children's room way back when.
Right.
And I've used them for name tags for nursery school children, sand dollars. So that's my touch of
It's
me.
funny you mentioned that all of a sudden you became aware that you were harvesting a living thing.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, is
And
it
I was
life
having
like that?
children do it with me. My own child and all the neighborhood children. They'd look for Mrs. Shenkman so they could go out and find. She knew how to find sand dollars.
Oh, really? Okay.
But at Cosset, I was the sand dollar lady. And this little Jewish girl made Christmas tree ornaments. The Christmas tree ornaments that I made didn't sell that well, but I have friends in East Granby who still hang those ornaments on their Christmas tree every
Oh,
year.
it's beautiful, yeah. You've
But,
left some memories in a lot of families with those.
Yeah. So I was the sand dollar lady in North Granby. Sorry, I didn't wear one today. Never thought about it.
No, that's
Never
quite
thought
all
about
right.
it.
Yeah, you can't prepare for everything. Yeah.
No, I can you believe I have no complaints about Granby?
Yeah, when we
I'm
were,
happy I've been here. People's change, neighborhoods change. There are certainly places that seniors can move to if they want to. The schools are good, the preschools, which was important.
yeah,
And of course, I'm very prejudiced as far as Cosset Library is concerned.
right.
I was very concerned for years that it might have been closed for financial reasons.
Yeah,
among
it's always
other
a
things.
challenge to have more than
Yeah.
one library in town. Yeah.
Yes, and it was a challenge for many years, but I think this is going well
It's-
too.
The community supported it, and it's still here, so that's great.
Right.
Yeah. So
Thanks to Innes's and all these women who are the friends of the library.
and yourself.
And
Yes.
no, I haven't given them much time for years,
Yeah.
not much other than loving that it's there,
Right.
because I can't walk there anymore.
Oh, okay, right.
Used to wheel the baby carriers up there. It's down East Street, which is not a street that I could do anymore.
Okay.
Yep, come. Maybe I'll do it again someday.
Yeah, in your next, well, after you retire, right?
Right. And the library in the center is a beautiful library.
So do you still get down to the Jewish Center and
Well, it's been so recent. I wasn't driving for a while this winter. I didn't drive till the first of the year, kind of.
Right.
So that my job was, I gave up the job. I didn't have to. They were very willing to hold it for me.
Right.
But last winter was not a winter for people who were worried about driving.
Right.
So I'm a little sorry I did that. I think that once you retire, it's a little different. Your life is different.
Yeah.
But no, I intend to go in and help them. I'm busy finding my own house and getting rid of all of the,
Something tells me
Thanks,
you're not
yeah.
ready to slow down too much.
not
No.
too much.
No.
But I don't walk around the neighborhood anymore, but that will come. You know, I avoid stairs and too much walking, and that comes with the 83 and a half.
Oh, boy. That's
No, no.
I notice as
that's-
people get older, they start doing the halves and quarters again, just like children.
Like the
They
children did.
start, right?
Right.
It's an accomplishment, you know? And
Yes,
you're
it
still,
is.
still doing
But I
what you need
never,
to
I
do.
never discussed publicly my age,
Okay.
because most of my friends, or the mothers of my son's friends, were
Yeah.
all 10 years younger than I, so I never discussed it too much.
Yeah.
But
Well,
why
I
not?
never would have guessed you were 83, so if that
Oh,
helps.
you're supposed to say that.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
you're supposed to. What else?
I'm not.
Yeah.
I've learned a few things.
That's on the agenda.
That's the agenda of being a man. You're supposed to.
Right, that's the agenda of being older. You accept it also.
There you go. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here tonight.
It has been
I
very
really
nice to have
thank you
been
for
here.
coming in and sharing your memories. And
I'm sorry I
hopefully-
couldn't be more specific about something.
Oh,
but
no, no,
I'm a
no.
happy camper at this point.
This is an unscripted show. We share our stories. So.
Okay.
And I would like to thank our audience for joining us tonight on Granby Community Television, Reflections on Granby. Once again, our guest, Thelma Shenkman, is a longtime resident of Granby, and she shared her story with us tonight, and we're glad you could join us for that. You can view these shows online at www.gctv16.org. And if you're so inclined, you can purchase a copy of any one of the shows we've taped here on GCTV through our website, and it's one of the ways that we do raise money for the station. And once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you.